listeners, to another episode of the BizBlend podcast where bold minds blend business with real, raw talk. I'm your host, Sana, as always, and today, listeners, we are diving into a topic that flips traditional leadership on its head. And it is personally very much, very favorite of mine. And listeners, joining us is Monica Rivera. She's a personal branding strategist, TEDx speaker, and a woman who's helped high performing executives own their voice without raising it. Now, in a world where being loud often equals being seen, being visible, Monica teaches something radically different. That clarity, not volume, creates true valuable impact. From working in a male dominated industry to speaking on global stages like NPR and the New York Times, Monica has mastered the art of quiet leadership. And today, she is going to share how you can too. So, if you have ever felt like this, that you are not loud enough to lead, I hope that this episode will shift your perspective and give you the necessary tools you can leverage right away. So, Monica, welcome to this show, and I'm really honored to have you here with us.
Thank you so much. That was such a beautiful introduction. I'm excited to talk about this. I think it's a really important topic for many people, but especially for women.
Absolutely. Couldn't be more right enough. So, Monica, yes, you say it's not the loudest voice that gets heard, but the clearest one. It can be right, but sometimes we see that in a meeting room or a boardroom, people who are loud, they often get the attention, and people who have actually have something meaningful to say, they often get kind of demotivated or dejected that I didn't get my space to say because I wasn't loud enough. So can you share a moment from your early career that made you realize that clarity is your real superpower?
Absolutely. So I worked in corporate America for quite a long time, for 20 years. And I remember one particular role. I was working in a very male dominated field, as you mentioned in the introduction. And I noticed there were a couple of differences. One, I was one of the only women on the team. At the time, I was the youngest. Also, I came from the States and they lived in a different country. And so there were lots of differences that sort of had me look like the outlier, if you will. And what I would try to do is be friendly and strike up conversation and try to connect with them. And no matter what I did, I wasn't finding my footing in the department amongst my coworkers. And so this was a really tough time for me where I thought, how am I going to be successful here if I can get them to one, take me seriously, and two, to listen to me? And so then I started to sit back and observe. So rather than do more, I said, okay, I'm going to hang back and I'm going to observe the interactions that are happening amongst other people, but also some of the things that are happening within the team itself. So, as part of this team, they were primarily mathematicians, statisticians, engineers. And so they would develop these really incredible tools in this tech company that I was part of. But what I noticed is that when they started to sell those tools and wanted to get buy in with stakeholders in marketing and sales and other parts of the company, what happened was they explained everything with such technical speak that the stakeholders didn't really understand what it was that they were doing. And that's when I noticed that there was a huge opportunity for me to say, well, I do understand what the technical team is talking about. And I also understand what the stakeholders want. And so this is when I established my voice by using my skills as a storyteller. So I was part translator so that the business could understand what these technical tools did. And I also was able to find my footing and be able to get more visibility and also speak up because I was able to leverage what my sweet spot was in this organization.
Wow. Opportunity and adversity.
Yes, absolutely. And I think oftentimes for people who struggle with that particular place of about, well, I'm not loud enough, or maybe I'm not vocal enough, or I'm not quite sure where my spot is. I would encourage people to look for what we call the white space, that empty space that is a gap or problem within their industry, their company, their business. and then think, what are the skills that you already possess so that you can answer that gap? And that is a perfect opportunity to use your voice, and people will listen because at the end of the day, whether you're a business owner or working a 9 to 5 in a traditional company, people want
Mhm.
problems to solve. And if you are the one that can solve them, they will listen to you.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you, Monica. And sometimes, okay, let's say I identify the white space and I adopt this approach. Um, there can be many times, when we intend that, okay, whatever I'm going to say, this is my right time, this is my right opportunity. Let me say whatever I want to say. So my intention can be really good, but then should I expect that whatever I'm saying or I'm suggesting or advising, is it going to really deliver any value, or the person who is listening to me, they will understand what I'm saying? Do I Should I have that expectation, or should I just say it?
One of the biggest things that I've learned, and I really appreciate this question, is when I shifted from working my traditional role specifically into entrepreneurship. One of the biggest lessons that I was taught was you have to believe in three things. One, you have to believe in your client, or in this case, your stakeholder. You have to believe in the offer or the solution that you have, but you also have to believe in yourself. And that belief in yourself is so important, especially if you are working to flex some of those speaking muscles for the first time. You need to be able to believe that what you say is valuable, that your expertise is needed, and that your skills are going to be the things that people need to hear. And so there's lots of different ways to do that. It really first comes from self trust that you are the person that can say these things and you have that know how and knowledge. But it also requires some of that confidence muscles, which only happens through action. And people don't want to hear that because they want to develop the confidence before the thing. But in order to really have real confidence, not manufactured confidence, it has to come from you continuously using your voice, even when it shakes, even when you feel uncomfortable, because the more practiced you become, the more natural it feels, and your belief starts to raise inside of yourself, and people will take you as seriously as they should.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, and Monica, I think this is so interesting, and this is so valid also. People picture whenever they picture an entrepreneur or a leader, they always picture someone who is super expressive,
Mhm.
um, and loud enough, because in business it is told that if you can't sell what you are going to sell, or your company or your idea, then you're not a good entrepreneur. So many emerging leaders, they feel that they need to be extroverted to be effective. So how can someone who is introverted or reserved, or they really function well behind the curtain, they can begin to own the room in their own authentic way?
Well, this is a fantastic question. So, I have a time where it was one of the first speaking opportunities that I had outside of my corporate role. So, this was one of the first opportunities for my own business for me to take the stage, if you will. And there was an event, and I was following someone who had a huge personality. He was so charismatic. He was also very loud, very expressive. If you've ever had a speaker that really takes up the entire room, both with their gestures and their voice, that is the person you're imagining is who I was following. And
Wow.
I am someone who doesn't speak in that same manner. I have a completely different style. And I remember sitting there listening to this gentleman speak, and I thought, quite honestly, maybe I should just pretend that I'm sick because I had this nervousness of I don't know if I can follow this person because his energy was just so big. But needless to say, I went up there anyway, and I embraced exactly the type of speaker that I am. And I would encourage everyone to think when you are trying to imitate or emulate someone else, people can usually tell. But when you are
Mhm.
most comfortable in yourself, again, in your message that you have to share, specifically in the point that you are trying to share. So that's one of the key things. always have your reason why you're delivering this talk. Always have this reason why you're speaking up in business or in your career. You want to lead with that so that people can immediately get their attention. But when you have that, those two things in hand. So, one, the reason why you're talking, and then also that belief that what you're saying has value. The
Mhm.
way that you're delivering it matters very little compared to someone who is loud versus someone who might be quiet spoken or someone, quite frankly, that is right in between. It's really about finding the style that works for you because if not, it's going to feel as if you're trying on someone else's coat and maybe it'll be too small or maybe it'll be oversized. But all people will thinking about is, wow, their coat really doesn't fit them very well. And you don't want that same thing to happen when you're speaking up. You want to feel one confident, but also as if it's your personality, not someone else's personality. So that is the thing that I would really encourage the most. It's not about trying to be like someone else. There are style tips and there are ways that we can refine someone's communication style. But my way of teaching and my way of consulting is never to have someone change who they are. It's only to maybe turn up certain levers in their speech or certain ways that they may phrase something. But we still want you to be who you are and not pretend to be someone else.
Absolutely. Exactly. Exactly. I 500% agree with that. And um, not just being too obvious, Monica, here for the listeners as well, but you know, and this, personally, I don't know. Nobody told me this, but sometimes I felt like this. So when um, in a team there are all men, I along with maybe another, two or three women. When I am speaking something, so my voice is soft and I cannot shout. So I sometimes used to feel like why my voice is so soft, why can't my manager or the leader who is sitting in front of me, why can't I make him to listen to me just because my voice is so soft? It's like getting mixed out and all that noise around me. So do you think it is more and more important for especially women uh, leaders or managers or employees, in their own levels of contribution, to have a voice that can be heard, or it has to be something different, in terms of the way they should adopt to make sure that their message is heard?
Yes, I think it's really comes from the order or sequence of the words that you say. So let's take a real practical example. If a company might be suffering in sales, and so this particular quarter, the sales may have been down, and you have a solution that could really change the game, and you want to propose this, the way that I would recommend it specifically for someone who feels maybe as if historically their voice hasn't been heard is to say something like this. Sales have been down for 30% in the last 2 quarters. I have an idea that I want to propose to everyone that will result in a 45% return if we implement this in the next 6 months. So, what I'm doing right there is that I'm capturing attention by using a headline to begin. So, I'm acknowledging what the problem has been historically, and then I'm positioning my solution with a time frame. So now, if it's a problem point for the company, and if we ever have a loss in sales, it is a problem for the company, then we want to position it by acknowledging that. And then we're immediately saying that we have a solution that can do X in Y amount of time. Now, I don't know about you, but people want to listen to that. And so it's really about coming in and introducing the topic in that strong way that then people are going to want to hear what you say next. So that is something that I encourage my clients to use because it gets people's attention. And this is where we can borrow a little bit from social media, whether you love it or don't love it. One of the things that social media has taught all of us is in order to capture attention, we need to do so within the first few seconds. Well, people are social media users and we're operating in the same way more and more where you have to get that attention up front. So again, I just want to reinforce you lead with the problem. This is your proposed solution. And if you can put any quantifiable numbers, increase by X% or be able to accomplish this in X amount of time, those are the things that people will stop and listen to what it is you have to say.
Well, that definitely makes sense. Hate it or love it, but it's not only social media, even in sales also,
Mhm.
and this is especially talked about in the cold calls, that within the first, I guess 7 minutes, you have to capture the attention of the lead, of the person you're calling, to pitch what you're going to sell. I mean, if you're not directly pitching anything, you just first have to grab their attention so that
Yes.
they can get to the next stage of the conversation. Because cold calling, and definitely, when you are trying to get those numbers done, it's really, really tough, really tough. So yes, I can definitely draw so many parallels with the traditional models as well, and social media.
That is such a good point. When I was in college, I worked for a bit, for about a year and a half as a telemarketer, which is a
Oh,
very tough role because people don't want to talk to telemarketers, especially when you are calling during their dinner time. And that is when we would call. It was between 5 and 8 o'clock every evening. And I remember there were so many people who hung up on me. But as many times as people hung up on me, it really taught me this certain level of resiliency to find different ways to get people's attention, to your point, to find different ways to connect with people. And telemarketing actually is really phenomenal for you trying on different ways to communicate and also get over a lot of the embarrassment, because by the 10th time someone has hung up on you, you're kind of like, well, it might happen again, and that's okay. I've survived it the past 10 times. I can survive it an 11th time. And it really does help you.
exactly. Oh, that is, yeah, that is true. That is true. It can be really, really demotivating and embarrassing, but yes, you have to keep going on. You have to keep going on.
Absolutely. I one time had someone tell me, "Your parents should be ashamed that you are calling people asking for money." And I thought, well, I can't imagine anyone's going to say something worse to me than that. And so I just took a moment. And at that particular time, there was a coworker sitting next to me. And so I shared that with her. And she said, well, why don't you just take 5 minutes? Just walk around for a little bit, get it out of your system, and then come back. And so that's what I did. It was great advice. I never forgot it. It was a lesson learned. But at the end of the day, I had a job to do, and that person wasn't going to sign up for what I was selling that particular day. But again, I think it really strengthened me as a professional because it
Mm,
shows you it's not personal. As much as we want to think things are personal, most of the time, it is truly just a reflection of someone else. So whether they're choosing to listen to you or not, it's based on their own biases. It's based off of their own subconscious thoughts. And it's our job to just observe what those are. As I shared in the beginning with that corporate role that I had, I needed to sit back and observe because in that observation, I was able to find my way in. So I would encourage people to, as much as it can feel like a bit of a sting when we're not ignored or we're not listened to, try to depersonalize it and then go from a place of curiosity and observation. And usually, when you rely on those two things, you can find your way in.
definitely, definitely. That's such a great example. Right, right. And yes, because we are talking about speaking, and then getting your message in the right way. I think language plays such an important role in there. So any kind of phrases or habits, Monica, that you observe even high level leaders fall into, that can dilute their presence, or maybe some kind of a desensitization of their message that they actually wanted to convey, but it gets translated in a different language or meaning.
Yes, for sure. I think one of the biggest things is the phrase I think versus I believe. So I think is maybe this may work. It gives the connotation of maybe this may work. I believe
Mhm.
has a different level of conviction and energy behind it. So even something as small as I think versus I believe can position whatever is going to come next in a way that the listener is going to perk up and also react to it differently. So that's one of the first things I would say. The second phrase that I don't think people recognize as much, because really it comes from a place of good intention. But often, if we say, does that make sense? we are saying it because we genuinely want to understand, were we clear? Does the person need any additional information? How can we support them? But really, what it does, especially around some people, is it will dilute your message because to them it reads, well, do you think you weren't clear? Why would you be asking whether or not it makes sense? Right. And so, what we are doing is something that has a very nice intention to make sure that people are understanding. However, when we position it that way, it is easy for people to think maybe they don't believe in what it is that they're saying. So instead of using, does that make sense? You can try something like, let me know your thoughts, or how does
Mm.
that land for you? So those are two examples. You give your position, you give your solution, whatever it is you're speaking about, and then you pause and ask, let me know your thoughts on that. And if they don't understand, then this will be a perfect opportunity where they interject and then they'll ask for more information, or you can ask, how does that land for you? And again, it does the same kind of thing. So that's another one. And then the last thing I want to say, and I notice, unfortunately, that women do this more than men in my experience. And it's the phrase, I'm just. So I'm just asking. I'm just an analyst. I'm just whatever word comes after that. And oftentimes, what's that doing? It's minimizing and diminishing you, whether it's your role, your skill set, your expertise. I'm just new at this role. I'm just out of college. All of those things really diminish your expertise. So if we can drop that minimizer and instead own our expertise, those three things that I just shared with you are really key communication skills that can change things for you.
Wow. Wow. The first one, I know this. The
Mhm.
other 2 points, these are such, wonderful golden nuggets, personally for me as well, because not only in the professional settings, but also in personal conversations or, the conversations I'm having with my guests or with my colleagues or with anyone. I believe these 2 points can really, really help me bring that conviction, clarity, and confidence to what I am saying or what I am trying to say or convey. So,
I'm so glad
really,
because often we think that it requires a huge shift or overhaul of how we speak. But truly, if we replace one or two words, it can make a
mm,
complete difference in how someone receives our message.
exactly, exactly. Brilliant, Monica. Brilliant. Also, some might argue that in highly competitive spaces, once again, I'm bringing in the sales and the entrepreneurship environments here. For example, sales or investment pitches. Being quiet is a disadvantage. Often we see in all those investment or pitching reality shows, for example, Shark Tank. People say that you have to be a great salesperson in order to pitch your idea or your company or your startup. So, how do you respond to the leaders who believe that volume and charisma are still necessary to win big?
I think that charisma can be developed. I don't think it's necessarily innate. I think some people are naturally charismatic, but if we take the Shark Tank example, I know people who've been on the show and they have gone
Mm,
through that rehearsal of their pitch hundreds
mm,
and hundreds of times. So we are seeing the finished product. We are not seeing the messy middle, and we are not seeing sometimes the disastrous beginning of trying to put it all together. So I'm someone who works with founders specifically on building their pitches. And I know that when I work with founders, there's a lot of nerves involved. There's also a very short amount of time that you have to not just capture someone's attention, but to really explain what your business does and how it helps people in sometimes as short as 2 minutes, which is
mm,
you're taking your life's work and trying to consolidate it into just a 2 minute time span, which is very difficult, but it can be done. But I want to emphasize that the finished product is really the result of so much work that has gone on in the background to practice and to rehearse and to try it in different settings under different conditions so that you can get to the place where it's polished. And I encourage people, whether I'm working with them on a TEDx, a pitch, or even a presentation they're sharing at work, don't underestimate the power of that rehearsal because you want to be able to land it. And the way to do that is to rehearse and not to be afraid of doing a little bit of that extra work because it can only help you.
Wow. That's really, really a great advice. Great advice, Monica. And if our listeners would like to connect with you, what will be the best way to do that?
Absolutely. So my website is You Wanna Do What, which is a very poor spelling of the name, but it was something that I created 8 years ago as a question to when I wanted to go into entrepreneurship. I kept asking myself, "You want to do what?" Because I thought it was so crazy and fantastical to go into entrepreneurship. So if you can add it to the show notes, that is the best way to get in touch with me through my website, youwannadowhat.com. You can reach out to me via email. I also have links to book calls so we can chat about any specific question you have. And I also have something for people who are thinking about how to position themselves, whether it's in your career or in your business or even your personal life. I have something called the Authority Accelerator. So if you go onto my site, it's a free PDF for you to help you think about what are those very top skills and expertise and talents you want to put to the forefront? And also, how are you going to be able to tell your story in a way that's more simplified? So, I want to offer that up to anyone who's listening as well, that you can just grab that guide, fill that out, and you can have a foundational framework for how you start to communicate yourself. And if you want any more support, I am here. Just again, you want to do what.com.
That's personal branding done in such a great way. There's a story behind it. There's a great recall value as well. So thank you. Thank you so much, Monica. I'll make sure to have all the links in the show notes for our listeners. And Monica, thank you once again for reminding us that leadership isn't about dominating the room. It is about owning your space with clarity, conviction, confidence, intention, and presence.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Monica. And to all the listeners, whether you are leading a team or you're part of your team, you're pitching your startup, or simply trying to show up more authentically, I hope that today's insights weren't just inspirational, they were tactical. So if you're ready to lead with your true voice, just go to the show notes, connect with Monica. I'll have everything in there along with this episode on your favorite podcast platform. And until next time, keep blending strategy with soul. Only here on BizBlend. Thank you.